Hello and welcome, everyone. Close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and let the gentle quiet of the night settle around you. Allow the noise of the modern world to fade away, step by step, leaving only the calm, rhythmic rise and fall of your breathing. Welcome to Sleepy Space Stories. If you enjoy unwinding with these peaceful journeys through time, please take a soft moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel to join our nightly voyages. Now, sink comfortably into your space. Let go of the day, and let us begin our journey back to the very beginning, to Chapter 1, A Tundra in Winter. Close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and let the quiet of the room settle around you. Imagine, if you will, the world stripped of everything modern, everything familiar, everything soft and warm. Let the noise of the present fade into nothingness, leaving only the stillness of a sky that has forgotten the sun. We are traveling back, stepping far beyond the boundary of recorded time, drifting back 20,000 years into the depth of the last glacial maximum. You are standing upon the grand, ancient expanse of the Pleistocene tundra, an endless, rolling steppe that stretches across what we now call northern Siberia, bridging the icy span into North America. Here, the earth does not merely endure winter. Winter is the very breath, the heartbeat, and the ancient law of the land. Look out across the horizon. The sky above is a vast, pale dome of twilight, painted in delicate, bruised shades of slate grey, soft violet, and bone white. The sun, if it rises at all on this day, is nothing more than a faint, silver coin hanging low near the rim of the earth, offering no warmth, only a soft, ethereal glow that washes over the endless blanket of snow. There are no trees here to break the line between the earth and the heavens, no tall forests to catch the wind, no rustling leaves, no shadows of green. There is only the expanse, rolling on and on into infinity, a wilderness carved entirely of frost, ice, and time. Listen closely to the silence. It is not an empty silence, but a profound, heavy quiet, thick with the weight of deep time. Underneath that silence runs the steady, unending whisper of the wind. It travels across thousands of miles of unbroken snow, carrying with it the fine, dry dust of crushed ice. The wind sweeps low over the hard-crusted drift, singing a soft, low whistle, a gentle, rhythmic lullaby of the high latitudes. It moves over frozen riverbeds, where rivers that once roared with the rush of spring melt now sleep beneath several feet of solid, glass-like ice. Deep beneath that crystalline armor, the earth lies dormant, locked in a timeless, blue-tinged slumber. In the far distance, towering mountain ranges rise up like jagged teeth against the dim sky. Their sharp, rocky peaks are frosted in pale drift, standing like silent guardians over a world made of frost. Everything is vast. Everything is still. The cold here is not merely weather. It is an atmosphere, a living presence that settles deep into the soil, binding the world together in an eternal, icy grip. It is a land of terrible, stunning beauty, a place where the sky feels impossibly wide, and the stars, when the twilight finally surrenders to the long Arctic night, shine with a sharp, brilliant clarity that feels close enough to touch. And yet, despite the bone-chilling cold and the harsh, unforgiving wind, this world is far from empty. Life moves here, patient and enduring, tuned to the rhythmic pulse of the Ice Age, look far across the pale plain, out toward the hazy edge where the snow meets the purple sky. Dark shapes are moving slowly across the white wilderness. They emerge gradually from the mist of blowing ice, stepping with a heavy, deliberate grace. They move not with haste, but with the quiet, measured patience of giants who know every contour of this frozen earth. These are the woolly mammoths, the true monarchs of the Pleistocene. As the herd draws nearer, their grand silhouettes take shape against the pale backdrop of the tundra. They move in a slow, rhythmic line, a family bound together by memory and blood, navigating a landscape that has been their home for countless generations. To look upon a mammoth in this ancient winter light is to behold an animal that seems to carry the entire weight and majesty of the Ice Age within its very form. Their broad, high-domed heads rise proudly against the horizon, capped with dense crests of coarse hair. Falling from their massive shoulders is a thick, sweeping coat of dark brown and reddish fur, a heavy, layered mantle that sways rhythmically with every long step they take. The long, outer guard hairs reach nearly to the ground, brushing against the crusted snow like a heavy curtain, sheltering them from the biting frost. Beneath that dark outer coat lies a dense, woolly underfur, a soft and impenetrable barrier trapped against their skin, retaining the quiet, radiant warmth of life in a world dominated by ice. And then, rising from their jaws, are the magnificent tusks, golden white, sweeping outward and curving gracefully back toward one another in great, spiraling arcs. These impressive structures are masterpieces of living art. They are far more than weapons or ornaments. They are tools of survival, carved by years of sweeping away heavy drifts to reach the pale, dry grasses sleeping beneath the snow. Each tusk bears the fine grooves and wear of a lifetime spent wandering these vast horizons, carrying the subtle story of every season, every winter, and every mile walked across the frozen steppe. The lead matriarch steps forward, her massive feet settling into the snow with a soft, muffled crunch. Her wide, padded soles spread the tremendous weight of her body evenly across the icy crust, allowing her to walk gracefully where other creatures might sink and struggle. She pauses, lifting her long, muscular trunk into the frigid air. The tip of her trunk flares gently, testing the breeze, smelling the distant scent of dry sagebrush, the crisp bite of fresh frost, and the subtle, familiar scent of her kin trailing behind her. Behind the matriarch, the rest of the herd follows in close formation. Young calves, wrapped in soft, dense coats of lighter auburn fur, walk safely tucked between the towering legs of their mothers and aunts. They press close against the warm, dark flanks of the adults, shielded from the relentless wind. The older herd members move with a quiet, synchronized cadence, their heavy breaths rising into the chilly air as soft plumes of white steam that drift away and vanish into the vast twilight sky. There is an undeniable dignity in their movement. They do not fight the cold. They belong to it. They are crafted for this environment in every detail, from the small, fur-covered ears tucked neatly against their heads to prevent the loss of warmth, to the short, heavy tails capped with thick tufts of hair. They are living fortresses of heat and life, navigating a world that seems almost entirely hostile to the fragile spark of living things. As the twilight deepens, the silver coin of the sun slips beneath the western rim of the earth. The pale violet hues of the sky darken into a rich, deep indigo. One by one, the ancient stars begin to blink open in the clear, vast vacuum of the night sky. They shine with an icy, shimmering intensity, cold blue diamonds set against the endless black. The wind softly shifts, humming a low, soothing tune across the vast Tundra steppe. The mammoths slow their pace, gathering together on the lee side of a low, rolling ridge to seek shelter from the night breeze. They press their large bodies close, forming a living wall of warmth against the dark. The young calves nestle deep into the center of the ring, surrounded by a mountain of dark, soft fur and gentle, steady breathing. The matriarch turns her head, looking back across the vast, white expanse they have crossed today. Her dark eyes, deep and full of ancient wisdom, reflect the faint light of the stars above. She lowers her great trunk, resting it gently upon the frozen earth. A long, deep sigh escapes her, a quiet breath of life floating upward into the cold night air, joining the infinite expanse of the Pleistocene sky. Here, in the heart of the winter night, time seems to stand completely still. The great white wilderness rests beneath the blanket of space, patient, beautiful, and vast. The herd sleeps, wrapped in their thick coats, lulled by the constant, rhythmic whisper of the wind over the snow. The tundra stretches on forever, holding its breath under the watchful gaze of the stars, waiting for the distant promise of a morning that lies many hours away. As the deep darkness holds the ancient earth in its quiet embrace, the herd rests in safety, oblivious to the immense gulf of time that separates their world from ours. They remain forever frozen in this moment of pure, silent majesty, the giant kings and queens of an epoch carved from frost and starlight, resting peacefully in the great, unbroken white silence of the world. Chapter 2: The Great Coat. Imagine resting your palm against a living mountain of heat, tucked safely away beneath the howling winds of the Pleistocene night. To look upon the woolly mammoth in the dim silver light of the glacial steppe is to witness a masterpiece of survival, an intricate tapestry of thread, oil, and bone woven over millions of years to defy the most brutal cold this planet has ever known. This coat was not merely an outer shell, nor was it a simple layer of protection against the elements. It was a cathedral of warmth, a brilliant, living fortress constructed specifically to hold the delicate flame of life against an environment designed to extinguish it. If you were to step closer in this pale winter twilight, moving through the soft, crunching snow until you stood beside one of these towering giants, the first thing you would notice is the sheer volume of their fur. It falls around them like a heavy, dark curtain, swaying with a slow, hypnotic rhythm as they shift their weight from foot to foot. The outermost layer of this coat consists of long, coarse guard hairs, individual strands reaching down toward the earth, sometimes extending nearly a meter in length. These guard hairs are stiff and remarkably resilient, acting as a flexible armor that breaks the relentless edge of the Arctic wind. When the gale sweeps across the open plain, carrying with it a blinding mist of crushed ice and razor-sharp frost, these long, sweeping strands catch the brunt of the storm. They allow the snow to slide off effortlessly, preventing moisture from ever reaching the skin beneath. Directly below this sweeping outer veil lies a second, middle layer of hair, slightly shorter, softer, and far more pliable. These fibers interlock with one another, forming a loose, trapping matrix that buffers the body from the ambient air. And then, beneath that middle shield, directly against the skin, lies the animal's ultimate defense, an impossibly dense underfur. This inner layer is a tightly woven blanket of fine, crimped wool, so thick and soft that it creates a nearly impenetrable barrier against the atmosphere. Air, warmed by the mammoth's powerful metabolism, becomes trapped within this microscopic labyrinth of fur. Once captured, that air remains still, creating a localized envelope of summer that travels with the giant wherever it roams. The wind may scream across the tundra, and the temperature may drop far below what any modern creature could endure. But within the microscopic spaces of that dense undercoat, the air remains calm, steady, and warm. From the well-preserved specimens sleeping beneath the Siberian permafrost, we have come to understand the rich, earthy palette of this magnificent coat. In the quiet dimness of the polar winter, the mammoths appear as deep, shadowy figures, their fur rich with tones of dark chocolate, burnt umber, and deep mahogany. Yet, where the low sun has kissed the tips of their long guard hairs over months of wandering open horizons, the fur softens into warm shades of auburn, rust, and golden copper. As the outer hairs age and absorb the faint ultraviolet rays of the high-latitude sky, they gently fade, giving the herd a soft, glowing halo when lit from behind by the dying colors of twilight. If you were to reach out now, sinking your fingers deep into that thick, heavy mantle, you would feel an extraordinary contrast. The outer strands feel weathered, coarse, and dusted with fine ice crystals, crisp to the touch. But as your hand presses deeper, passing through the outer guard hairs and entering the dense, woolly underlayer, the cold instantly retreats. You are met with a profound, radiant heat, a deep, slow warmth generated by a heart the size of a chest, pumping life through miles of vessel and muscle. Beneath this massive triple-layered coat lies the skin itself, remarkably thick, tough, and rich with natural oils that repel any trace of melting frost. And beneath that supple hide rests a vast layer of dense fat, several inches deep, wrapping the mammoth's entire body in a seamless thermal vault. This stored energy does more than insulate. It fuels the creature through the lean, dark months when the grasses are buried under hard-crusted drift, serving as a reserve of pure life held in trust against the long winter. The mammoth feels this intense cold only as a distant whisper. Within its body, the biological furnace burns steady and quiet. Every breath of frigid air inhaled through its muscular trunk is warmed through specialized nasal passages before it ever touches the lungs. Every drop of heat is carefully husbanded, recycled, and held close to the core. To stand beside such an animal in the frozen night is to feel the quiet victory of life over the void, a gentle, thrumming warmth that radiates outward into the stillness of the snow, defying the dark and keeping the long winter at bay. Chapter 3: Tusks. Like ivory swords, As the herd moves across the pale, hard-crusted snow, your eyes are drawn upward, mesmerized by the most striking, regal feature of these ancient giants. Rising from the deep sockets of their heavy skull bones are great, gleaming arcs of ivory tusks that sweep outward, curve elegantly upward, and turn gently back toward one another in spiraling, majestic loops. In the oldest and grandest bull mammoths, these tusks extend far beyond the height of a grown human, reaching out like golden white bridges carved from living bone and time itself. They are not merely teeth extended into the air. They are living monuments, carrying the architecture of an entire lifetime within their vast, curving lines. Watch how the pale twilight catches the smooth, weathered surfaces of these massive structures. In the cold silver glow of the northern sky, the ivory shines with a soft, buttery warmth, patterned with subtle rings and fine, shadowy grain that tell the story of every winter survived, every spring welcomed, and every long trek across the tundra. Unlike the straighter, sharper tusks of modern forest elephants, the tusks of the woolly mammoth are dramatic works of natural design, sculpted specifically for life in a world covered in deep, crusted ice. To understand these ivory swords is to understand how the mammoth survived in a landscape where food lay buried beneath thick, frozen drifts. Watch the lead matriarch as she lowers her broad head toward the earth. She does not scrape at the snow with her feet, nor does she struggle against the hard, wind-packed crust. Instead, with a smooth, practiced tilt of her heavy neck, she uses the broad, sweeping curve of her dominant tusk like an ancient wooden plow. She sways her great head in a steady, rhythmic arc, sweeping away the heavy layer of white powder to expose the pale, nutrient-rich grasses sleeping beneath. The curvature of her tusk creates a natural blade, gliding beneath the snow and lifting it aside with minimal effort, revealing the hidden harvest of the tundra floor. For decades, through every long polar night, this daily ritual of sweeping and scraping leaves an indelible mark upon the ivory itself. If you were to trace your fingers along the outer edge of a fossilized tusk thousands of years later, you would feel a distinct, polished groove, a smooth, worn flat spot near the tip where the ivory pressed against the gritty snow and frozen soil millions of times over a lifespan. And in these wear patterns lies a remarkable secret, a quiet connection between their world and ours. Just as humans favor their right or left hand, individual mammoths possessed a natural preference for one tusk over the other. One side would bear the deep, smooth polish of constant use, the primary tool for clearing snow, stripping the tough bark from low willow shrubs, and testing the depth of river ice, while the other side remained slightly less worn, reserved as the secondary anchor. In the quiet wear of the ivory, the unique personality and subtle daily habits of each individual giant were permanently recorded. As the young bulls grow into their full strength, their tusks take on new meaning within the complex social tapestry of the herd. They become visual signals of immense power, age, and vital health, broadcast across miles of open plain. A bull bearing vast, thick, beautifully spiraled tusks communicates his endurance to every rival and potential mate without ever needing to raise a foot. The sheer size of his ivory is proof that he has navigated decades of harsh winters, defended himself against predators, and found enough nourishment in the frozen wastes to build and maintain such massive structures. Yet there are moments when visual signals are not enough, when the quiet of the autumn tundra is broken by the deep, echoing crack of ivory striking ivory. During the seasonal rut, when the air grows crisp with the promise of returning ice, rival bulls stand face to face beneath the low sun. They lower their heads, intertwining their spiraled tusks in a deliberate, heavy lock of strength. They do not seek to pierce or destroy one another. Rather, their curved tusks act as massive shields and levers, interlocking like giant fingers so the two titans can test their weight, pushing and swaying against each other until one yields to the superior strength of the other. The spiral shape prevents the tusks from inflicting fatal wounds, turning what could be a deadly clash into a grand, measured trial of power and endurance. In the quiet hours of the Arctic night, as the herd settles against a low ridge to rest, the mammoths lower their heads, resting the heavy weight of their tusks directly upon the hard snow. The muscles of their neck and shoulders, immense and dense with power, finally relax in the still dark. The tusks lie like pale roots growing out into the earth, anchoring the sleeping giants to the land they rule. Imagine, for a moment, stepping out of the stream of modern time and standing in a quiet room, holding the preserved tusk of one of these ancient wanderers in your hands. It is surprisingly heavy, a dense, solid weight that pulls at your arms with the physical presence of the deep past. As your fingers glide over the cold, polished ivory, you can feel the subtle, microscopic ridges running along its length. These are the growth rings, stacked layer upon layer, week by week, year by year, like the rings within the trunk of an ancient redwood tree. Within this curve of ivory lies the entire biography of a single life. Here, in a slightly thinner ring, is the memory of a long, harsh winter when food was scarce and the cold bit deep into the bone. There, in a wider, richer band, is the record of a gentle summer spent grazing in lush river valleys filled with blooming tundra flowers and cool water. Every season of hunger, every time of abundance, every step taken across thousands of miles of wilderness is preserved here, carved in the chemical memory of the bone. To hold a mammoth tusk is to hold a story that took 80 years to write and 20,000 years to preserve. It is to touch the very essence of an animal that carried the weight of the Ice Age upon its brow, an animal that lived with a quiet, majestic grace in a world made of frost and starlight. As you lie here in the peaceful dark, feeling the steady rhythm of your own breath, the weight of that ivory seems to dissolve into the quiet air. The great herd moves slowly onward through your thoughts, their tusks gleaming like ivory swords in the faint twilight, leading them deeper into the endless white expanse. And as they walk, the shadows of the tundra lengthen, whispering of secrets still hidden beneath the ice, waiting for the story to unfold in the stillness of the chapters yet to come. Chapter 4. The Mammoth Steppe. Imagine standing atop a low, rolling ridge at the height of the Pleistocene, looking out across an endless sea of wild, wind-blown grass. This was the Mammoth Steppe, the largest, richest biome the Earth has ever known. It was a single, continuous realm of green and gold that wrapped itself around the crown of the world, stretching uninterrupted from the sun-washed hills of Iberia, across the frozen heart of Eurasia, over the lost land bridge of Beringia, and deep into the heart of modern-day Canada. It was an ecosystem of staggering scale, a landscape so vast and full of life that it defies the modern imagination. Where today we see only the silent, moss-choked tundra or the dark, stunted forests of the far north, there once laid an endless ocean of tall, nutrient-dense grasses, sedges, and blooming Arctic wildflowers, humming with the quiet vitality of millions upon millions of living creatures. To step into this world is to realize that the Ice Age was not merely a story of dead stone and barren frost. It was an age of biological abundance so magnificent that it made the modern plains of the Serengeti look modest by comparison. As the pale golden light of late afternoon washes over the plain, the horizon seems to ripple like water under a gentle breeze. The grass, rich in protein and kept dry by the cold, crisp air, sways in long, rhythmic waves. It smells of dried sage, sweet earth, and the warm, musk-scented breath of countless herds grazing beneath an open, cloudless sky. Look out across the undulating hills, and you will see the true lords of this vanished paradise. Moving together in a massive, slow-moving tide are animals built on a scale of grand fantasy. Off in the distance, a pair of woolly rhinoceroses graze peacefully along a low riverbank, their thick, armored bodies shrouded in coarse reddish wool, their massive, flattened horns sweeping low through the grass. Nearby, broad herds of steppe bison move in a dense, dark mass, their broad shoulders lifting as they kick up small clouds of golden dust that shimmer in the twilight air. Wild horses, swift and dun-colored with dark, upright manes, dart through the valleys like shadows, their hooves striking the hard earth in a fast, rhythmic cadence. Reindeer, saiga, antelopes with their strange, soft, trunk-like snouts, and vast herds of elk move continuously across the expanse, a living tapestry woven into the very fabric of the soil. And prowling the fringes of these great herds, moving with a silent, terrifying grace through the high grass, are the apex predators of the ancient world. Cave lions vastly larger and heavier than any lion walking the earth today watch the horizon with glowing, amber eyes, their thick, pale coats blending seamlessly into the sun-cured vegetation. Beside them, in the deep history of this soil, walk short-faced bears and powerful packs of Ice Age wolves, keeping the endless pulse of life and death in a delicate, perfect balance. Yet, at the absolute center of this magnificent realm, the pillar holding up the entire sky of this ecosystem, was the woolly mammoth. The mammoth was not merely an inhabitant of the steppe. The mammoth was its creator, its architect, and its tireless guardian. They were what we now call a keystone species, an animal whose daily life was so deeply intertwined with the landscape that the environment itself depended on their survival. Without the mammoth, the steppe could not exist. Watch how a family group moves through the high grass, their massive feet pounding the earth with a slow, deliberate rhythm. As these giants walked across the plains, their immense weight acted as a natural compactor, crushing the soft mosses and woody shrubs that constantly threatened to choke out the light. They broke up the hard crust of the winter snow, allowing the cold air to penetrate deep into the ground, preserving the frozen permafrost below while keeping the surface soil dry and fertile. When they grazed, they did so on a scale that reshaped the earth. A single adult mammoth consumed hundreds of pounds of tough grass every single day. Using their powerful trunks, they ripped up the vegetation, turning over the soil, clearing away dead thatch, and dispersing seeds across hundreds of miles through their dung, which acted as a rich, organic fertilizer for the next season's growth. Where they fed, the grass grew back thicker, sweeter, and more resilient. Where they walked, they knocked down encroaching saplings and larch trees, preventing the creeping dark forests from claiming the light and turning the bright, open grasslands into damp, cold woodland. They were living plowshares, transforming the cold northern wilderness into a boundless pasture of life. Every step they took, every tree they uprooted, every path they carved through the winter snow kept the great engine of the Mammoth Steppe turning. They were the gentle gardeners of a cold, sunlit world, holding back the ice with their hunger and shaping a continent with their stride. As you lie here in the stillness of the night, listening to the soft, steady rhythm of your own breath, picture that boundless horizon. Imagine the cool, dry wind sweeping over thousands of miles of golden grass, whispering through the mane of the wild horse and the thick fur of the grazing giant. Feel the deep, quiet peace of a world where life did not merely endure the cold, but flourished in unimaginable riches, bound together by the slow, enduring march of the mammoths. The light fades slowly over the grand steppe, brushing the tops of the waving grass with shades of deep amber and quiet violet. The herds drift slowly toward the river valleys, their silhouettes merging with the gathering shadows of the evening. The air grows still, cold, and clear, and a deep, ancient quiet settles over the boundless land, a quiet that carries the promise of a story still unfolding, holding its breath in the dark until the dawn breaks once again upon the endless horizon. Chapter 5: Finding Food Under Snow. Imagine the deep, unbroken quiet of a midnight world where every breath is a visible cloud of silver steam drifting slowly upward into the dark. The wind that scoured the open tundra earlier has died down to a whispered hush, leaving behind a cold so profound it feels almost solid, like a sheet of heavy crystal pressed against the earth. Beneath this vast, star-speckled sky, the world is asleep under a thick, hard-crusted blanket of white. But for the giant wanderers of the Pleistocene, there is no rest until the endless fire within them is fed. In the dark, in the cold, against the bitter resistance of a frozen continent, the search for life-sustaining greenery never truly stops. To survive in this realm of endless frost, a mammoth could not merely wander and hope to find exposed ground. The snow of the Arctic steppe was not always light and powdery. Swept by relentless gales, it compressed into dense, icy armor over the soil, locking away the sun-cured grasses beneath a vault of hard ice. To reach the nutrients buried underneath, the mammoth had to become a force of nature unto itself, turning its entire anatomy into a living, patient mining engine. Listen to the rhythm of the feeding giant. It begins with the heavy, deliberate sway of a great skull. The matriarch lowers her head, placing the broad, curved blade of her tusk against the hard crust of the snow. With a low, echoing scrape, a sound like stone grinding against iron, she sweeps her head in a long, rhythmic arc. The outer curve of her dominant tusk bites into the crusted drift, fracturing the ice with a sharp, echoing crack that ripples through the still night air. Chunk by chunk, the hard white layer gives way, cleared aside by the immense leverage of her neck and shoulders. She does not rush. In the winter steppe, rushing is a waste of precious warmth, and every movement must be calculated with the quiet efficiency of an animal that understands the exact cost of living. She sweeps once, twice, 3 times, clearing a wide, shallow crater in the snow until the dark, frosted tips of buried Arctic grasses and sedges are finally revealed. Now comes the delicate work. For all the massive power stored in her limbs and tusks, the mammoth's most extraordinary tool is her trunk, a marvel of muscle, nerve, and sensitivity unmatched in the natural world. She lowers the tip of her trunk into the cleared depression. Where her tusks are broad levers of brute force, the double-fingered tip of her trunk is as precise as a human hand, covered in microscopic, sensitive hairs that can feel the subtle variations of texture and temperature through the frost. Her trunk explores the frozen earth. She breathes out softly, a warm, moist cloud of air spilling from her nostrils onto the icy stems. The heat of her breath briefly loosens the frozen grip of the soil, softening the brittle blades of grass just enough so they do not shatter into useless dust. Her trunk fingers wrap around a tight bundle of dry, protein-rich vegetation, gripping it firmly at the roots. With a smooth, gentle pull, she lifts the bundle from the ground, shaking it once or twice against her knee to clear away the clinging ice crystals, before sweeping it upward toward her mouth. The sound of her grinding teeth breaks the stillness, a slow, heavy, rhythmic crunch as her massive molars, built like corrugated iron plates, pulverize the fibrous grass into a coarse paste. Every mouthful is a hard-won victory against the freezing winter. The dry grass, preserved by the sub-zero air like a vast natural storehouse, contains the concentrated sunlight of a vanished summer. But extracting that energy requires endless, untiring effort. A single adult mammoth required hundreds of pounds of fodder every single day just to keep the internal furnace burning, to maintain the deep layer of insulating fat beneath her hide, and to power a heart that beat with a low, steady thunder. In the warmth of summer, when the steppe bloomed in lush abundance, gathering such a mountain of food was a peaceful, leisurely affair. But here, in the depths of an Ice Age winter, every single bundle of grass had to be fought for, dug up, and scraped free from the frozen grip of the soil. Imagine the sheer scale of that labor. Hour after hour, through the dim silver twilight of the short day and the long bitter hours of the polar night, the giant must stand, sweep, dig, and gather. Step by deliberate step, the herd moves across the white wilderness, leaving behind them a long trail of cleared craters in the snow, a testament to their ceaseless, quiet work. Beside the matriarch, her young calf watches closely, learning the ancient choreography of survival. The calf's tusks are still small, mere nubs compared to the majestic ivory spirals of its mother. It tries to mimic her movements, nudging at the snow with its small head, but the crust is too thick, too hard for its tender frame. The mother notices. Without interrupting her rhythm, she sweeps her tusk in a wider arc, clearing a larger patch of earth so her young one can reach the exposed vegetation beneath. The calf steps into the cleared space, burying its small trunk into the warm steam of its mother's breath, picking through the grass she has unburied. In this simple, shared gesture lies the true spirit of the herd. Survival on the Mammoth Steppe was not a solitary struggle. It was a cooperative masterpiece passed down through generations of knowledge. The oldest matriarchs remembered the best winter feeding grounds, the sheltered river valleys where the snow drifted shallow, the south-facing slopes where the autumn winds blew the ridges bare, and the frozen marshes where the sedges grew tall and thick beneath the ice. As the night deepens, a quiet rhythm settles over the feeding herd, the sound of scraping ivory, the soft puffing of warm breath against the frost, the steady crunching of heavy jaws, and the muffled footsteps of giants moving through the drift blend into a single, hypnotic lullaby. It is the sound of life enduring, unbroken and unhurried, in a world carved from ice and starlight. The cold continues to deepen, hovering over the tundra like a silent shroud, but within the ring of the herd, there is only warmth, patience, and purpose. They do not complain of the cold, nor do they fear the long darkness. They simply keep working, moving slowly across the boundless white plain, carrying the gentle, invincible flame of life forward into the quiet night. Chapter 6. The Herd and Its Matriarch. In this world of endless white, survival was never a solitary endeavor. It was held together by something far deeper than mere strength, something far more durable than bone or ivory. It was held together by memory. At the very center of the woolly mammoth's world was the herd, a tight-knit family bound by blood, affection, and decades of shared experience. Like the modern elephants that walk the warm savannas of our present day, the mammoth herd was a matriarchy, a society governed not by aggression or force, but by wisdom, patience, and the profound depth of an elder's mind. Look closely through the veil of falling snow at the figure leading the way. This is the matriarch. She is the largest female in the family, a towering dark mountain of fur and bone, whose presence demands a quiet, instinctive reverence from every soul in her care. To look upon her is to read the history of the Pleistocene written upon a living canvas. Her immense tusks, sweeping wide and spiraling gracefully inward, are worn down by 70 years of constant labor, grooved by millions of sweeps through frozen drifts, scarred by seasons of drought, and polished by the touch of countless rubbing trees and river stones long since turned to dust. Her broad brow carries the weight of 1,000 decisions, her dark eyes filled with a quiet, calm certainty that can only come from surviving every trial this brutal planet could devise. She moves with a slow, deliberate grace. Every step she takes is calculated, saving her strength while carving a soft, manageable path through the deep drifts for the smaller legs trailing behind her. She does not hurry, for she knows that haste brings exhaustion, and exhaustion in the deep cold is the quiet precursor to death. When she pauses, the entire herd pauses. When she turns her great head toward the west, every ear shifts to listen to the horizon. Her mind is a vast, living atlas, a mental map forged over nearly a century of wandering across thousands of miles of shifting tundra. Within her memory rests the locations of hidden river valleys where fresh, liquid water still flows beneath thin sheets of ice during the bitterest droughts. She remembers the sheltered canyon walls that block the worst of the northern gales, the ancient mineral licks rich in essential salts, and the high, wind-swept ridges where the autumn grass remains clear of heavy snow. She remembers the distinct, musky scent of a hunting pride of cave lions carried on a distant breeze, recognizing the danger long before any young mother in the group senses a threat. She carries the collective survival of her line inside her head, a precious inheritance passed down from her mother before her and to her daughters behind her. Surrounding the matriarch is a living ring of protective warmth. Positioned safely at the absolute center of the moving herd are the young calves. Wrapped in soft, woolly coats of lighter auburn fur, these little ones step carefully within the footprints left by the adults, sheltered on all sides by towering walls of dark, thick fur. Their mothers and aunts walk beside them, constantly reaching out with the sensitive tips of their trunks to touch a soft ear, to nudge a trailing hip, or to offer a gentle, reassuring stroke along a small back. This touch is a language of absolute security, telling the young that no matter how vast or frightening the white wilderness around them becomes, they are safe, cherished, and defended. Further out, along the edges of the family group, move the adolescent females and the young males who have not yet reached maturity. They act as the sentinels of the herd, their young eyes sweeping the horizon, their trunks lifted to test the cold air for any sign of change. And trailing even further back, moving like dark shadows along the periphery of the main body, are the solitary older bulls. Though they live largely independent lives, wandering the steppe alone or in loose bachelor groups, they are drawn back to the family during times of transition, orbiting the matriarch's wisdom like silent, towering guardians. Yet, despite the vast distances of the open steppe and the howling of the polar wind, this herd is never truly silent. They communicate through a soft, continuous stream of low-frequency rumbles, deep, resonant vocalizations produced deep within their massive chests. Much of this sound is pitched so low that human ears could never catch it, traveling not through the cold air, but as gentle, seismic waves moving directly through the frozen earth itself. Through the sensitive pads of their wide, cushioned feet, the mammoths feel the rhythmic pulse of their family. A mother can feel the steady, reassuring heartbeat of her calf stepping a few yards away. The matriarch can send a quiet, low-frequency signal of caution that ripples through the soil for miles, telling scattered family members to alter their course and gather close. It is a silent, invisible conversation that knits the herd together into a single, unified organism, breathing as one, feeling as one, moving as one across the infinite landscape. Now, as the silver twilight fades completely into the dark indigo of night, the atmosphere begins to shift. The air grows thick and heavy, and the stars above are swallowed whole by a dense, suffocating blanket of grey cloud. The wind, which had been a gentle whisper, begins to build into a low, mournful roar. An Arctic blizzard is descending upon the steppe, a whiteout storm capable of burying the world in ice within a matter of hours. The temperature plummets, and the air becomes a blinding vortex of fine, razor-sharp snow that obliterates all visibility. The horizon vanishes, earth and sky merge into a single, disorienting void of swirling white. To be caught unprepared in such a tempest is to freeze where you stand, lost in an ocean of ice without direction or hope. The younger mothers panic slightly, crowding together, their low rumbles growing anxious and high-pitched as the freezing wind bites into their flanks. But the matriarch remains completely still. She lifts her massive head high into the storm, turning her face directly into the teeth of the gale. She closes her eyes against the stinging ice, relying entirely on a deeper, older sense. She reaches back into the deep vault of her memory, searching through 40 years of remembered storms. She remembers a similar night from her own youth, a time when her own mother led the herd through a blind whiteout toward a deep, hidden gorge carved into the basalt hills miles to the south. She remembers the exact texture of the wind as it curved around those ancient stone walls, the way the air grew instantly still and warm beneath the overhanging rock, and the smell of dry, sheltered grass waiting in the lee of the canyon floor. With a low, powerful rumble that vibrates deep within the frozen soil, a sound of absolute authority and calm reassurance, the matriarch steps forward into the blinding whiteout. She does not hesitate. She does not doubt. The herd closes in tightly behind her. The calves press their faces against their mother's flanks. The mothers press against one another, forming a solid, dark wall of moving fur, and the entire family aligns itself directly behind the heavy, steady rhythm of the matriarch's stride. Step by deliberate step, she breaks the trail through the rising drifts, her towering silhouette cutting through the chaos of the storm like the prow of a great ship, navigating a dark sea. She leads them onward through the pitch-black night, guided not by sight, but by the quiet, unyielding map held within her heart. They walk through the howling wind, safe in the knowledge that as long as they follow the path of the Ancient One, the storm cannot break them. They are moving toward shelter, toward warmth, and toward the quiet promise of another dawn, held safely in the enduring memory of the last great giant. Chapter 7. Birth on the Ice. It is in this gentle, fleeting window of warmth that a miracle occurs. Spring on the Ice Age steppe is not merely a change of season, it is a desperate, beautiful promise. Life must be renewed now, in these brief months of sun and abundance, so that the new generation has every possible day to grow, to build thick layers of protective fat, and to strengthen young muscle before the great cold inevitably returns to claim the land once more. Deep within a sheltered hollow of low, grassy hills, the herd slows its pace and gathers in a close, protective circle. At the center of this living fortress stands a young mother. For 22 long, silent months, through 2 full winters of howling blizzards and endless polar nights, she has carried this delicate spark of life within her. Now, the time has come for that spark to step into the vast, open world. The mothers and aunts of the herd press close around her, their massive, dark bodies forming a windbreak against the gentle mountain air. They do not watch in distant silence. They share in her labor with a profound, tender presence. Their trunks reach out in constant, soothing motions, gently caressing her back, stroking her massive shoulders and resting softly against her flanks. Deep within their chests, a low, continuous rumble hums, a vibration pitched so low it echoes through the very soil beneath their feet, wrapping the laboring mother in a blanket of warm, rhythmic sound. It is an ancient song of encouragement, a shared memory of birth passed down through thousands of generations. With a deep, heavy sigh that lifts her broad chest, the mother leans slightly into the support of her sisters. And there, on the soft, mossy earth carpeted with fresh green sprouts, the newborn calf enters the world. The arrival is met with an immediate, tender urgency. The mother turns slowly, her dark eyes filled with an overwhelming, ancient devotion. Before the cool spring air can chill the wet newborn, her long, muscular trunk goes to work. With remarkable delicacy, she uses her trunk to clear the protective membrane from the calf's face, nudging the small body with gentle, rhythmic strokes. She licks and brushes the newborn's coat, her warm breath steaming in the crisp afternoon air, drying the fur and stimulating the circulation in those tiny, untried limbs. What emerges beneath her tender care is a marvel of biological design. Though dwarfed by the towering mountain of dark fur that is its mother, the calf is far from fragile. Weighing nearly 200 pounds at the moment of its birth, it is already a substantial, robust creature built specifically for this harsh, beautiful world. Its body is already wrapped in a thick, dense coat of soft, auburn-colored wool, longer and warmer than that of any modern newborn elephant. Its ears are tiny, neat buttons tucked tightly against its head to trap body heat, and its small, stubby trunk twitches curiously, testing the crisp air for the very first time. The newborn lies quietly in the soft grass for a few moments, blinking against the unaccustomed brightness of the sun. The world is impossibly vast, filled with strange new scents of sweet grass and rich soil. But the first thing the calf truly knows is the deep, comforting warmth of its mother's presence. Then comes the great, instinctive challenge of early life. Driven by an ancient, quiet impulse, the calf attempts to stand. It extends its thick, padded legs, struggling to find purchase on the slippery, uneven moss. It lifts its heavy little body an inch or two off the ground, only for its unsteady knees to wobble and give way, tumbling the calf gently back into the soft grass. The mother does not force the process, nor does she lift the calf outright. Instead, she offers the subtle, steady support of her great form. She slides her trunk gently beneath the calf's chest, offering a firm, warm brace for the young one to lean against. She rumbles softly a quiet, encouraging murmur that seems to say, "Try again, I am here." Inspired by her touch, the calf gathers its strength once more. It plants its wide, soft feet firmly into the earth, shakes its small head, and pushes upward with all its might. Its legs tremble, swaying like young willow saplings in a breeze, but this time the muscles lock into place. The calf stands. It takes a single wobbly step forward, balancing against the steady pillar of its mother's leg, taking its very first stance upon the ancient earth. A quiet wave of excitement ripples through the surrounding herd. The aunties and elder sisters step closer, their massive heads lowering as they gather to inspect the newborn life. They reach out with the delicate tips of their trunks, softly touching the calf's head, sniffing the sweet, warm scent of the newborn and lightly caressing its woolly back. Each touch is a welcome, an initiation into the family, a silent vow that this small creature will never walk the vast steppe alone. Within an hour of its birth, guided by the patient, nudging trunk of its mother, the calf finds its way to her side to nurse. The warm, rich milk flows, carrying essential nutrients, vital energy, and immune protections forged from the mother's own strength. As the calf drinks deeply, its small tail gives a satisfied, rhythmic flick, and a quiet, purring rumble vibrates deep within its tiny throat. The mother rests her heavy head gently over her child, her long, curving tusks framing the newborn like an archway of golden ivory, shielding it from the sun, the wind, and the vastness of the open sky. As the afternoon slowly wanes, the golden sun dips low toward the western horizon, painting the snow-capped peaks in shades of soft rose, lavender, and pale gold. The air cools slightly, but the ground beneath the herd remains warm, holding the gathered heat of the spring day. The feeding done, the calf's eyelids grow heavy. The immense effort of entering the world, standing, and taking its first steps, begins to weigh upon its young limbs. It sinks down into the soft, sun-warmed bed of tundra moss and dry grass, nestling its head directly against the warm, dense fur of its mother's front leg. The mother slowly lowers herself beside her child, tucking her broad body around the calf to form a crescent wall of soft, impenetrable warmth. She rests her trunk gently across the calf's side, feeling the steady, peaceful rise and fall of its chest. Around them, the rest of the herd settles into a loose circle, their towering silhouettes dark against the twilight sky, standing guard over the quiet miracle in their midst. The young calf closes its eyes, sinking into a deep, dreamless slumber, completely wrapped in love, warmth, and absolute security. Outside their cozy hollow, the vast steppe stretches on for thousands of miles under the fading light. But here, in the quiet heart of the family, the future of the Ice Age sleeps peacefully, cradled in the gentle breath of the summer earth. Chapter 8 calls across the tundra. Yet, if you were to listen closely, paying attention not just with your ears, but with your whole body, you would realize that this white silence is actually an illusion. The air and the very earth beneath your feet are alive with a hidden, continuous symphony of sound, a secret language woven into the fabric of the Ice Age, carrying stories, warnings, and quiet reassurances across distances that seem impossibly vast. At the heart of this ancient soundscape is a voice like no other in the history of the earth. It does not begin in the air, but deep within the massive, muscular chest of the woolly mammoth. When a mammoth speaks to its family, it produces a sound so low, so deep, and so rich in resonance that it falls below the frequency of human hearing. This is infrasound, a low-pitched, thunderous rumble that bypasses the ear entirely, traveling directly into the earth and vibrating through the soles of your feet. Imagine the feeling of standing near a great wooden bridge as a heavy weight rolls across it, or the subtle, deep vibration that shudders through the air just before the thunder strikes in a summer storm. That is the true voice of the mammoth. It is a sound felt as a gentle, rhythmic pulse in your chest, a warm trembling in the frozen soil beneath you. Out on the flat, unbroken expanse of the Tundra steppe, where there are no dense forests or tall mountains to block the sound waves, these infrasonic calls travel with extraordinary power. While higher pitch sounds scatter and fade quickly in the cold air, these low, rolling rumbles hug the contour of the earth, gliding over frozen riverbeds, dipping through shallow valleys, and sweeping across miles of open grassland without losing their strength. Two family groups, separated by miles of open tundra and completely hidden from each other by the curvature of the hills, are never truly alone. The matriarch of one herd lifts her broad head, taking a deep, slow breath, and sends a low rumble rolling through the ground. Miles away, another matriarch pauses her grazing. She does not look up into the sky. Instead, she shifts her heavy weight, pressing the wide, sensitive pads of her front feet firmly against the hard-packed earth. Through special nerve endings in her feet and trunk, she receives the message, feeling the precise direction, the distance, and the mood of her distant kin. They speak of many things across these vast distances. They share news of waterholes that remain unfrozen, of high ridges cleared of snow by the autumn winds, and of the distant, faint sense of predators drifting on the northern breeze. It is an invisible network of connection, a web of sound that binds the scattered families together into a single, conscious community spanning an entire continent. If you were to step inside the center of a grazing herd, the soundscape transforms into something deeply intimate and comforting. From within, the herd is never silent. It is filled with a constant, low-frequency murmur, a continuous conversation that creates an atmosphere of absolute safety. Listen to the gentle choir of the family at rest. There are soft, rhythmic contact calls, gentle, purring rumbles that mothers use to check on their calves as they wander through the tall grass. It is a soft, soothing sound that translates to a simple, eternal truth. I am here, you are safe, all is well. The young calf hears this low vibration humming through its mother's body whenever it presses against her side, feeling the warmth and the sound merging into a single sensation of total peace. There are higher, clearer sounds as well. A sudden trumpet from a young, playful juvenile echoing off a nearby riverbank, a sound of pure vitality and exuberance that startles a flock of winter ptarmigans into the air. There are soft, breathy huffs as the giants clear their nasal passages, the steady, rhythmic crunch of massive molars grinding tough prairie grass, and the soft, heavy sigh of a great chest expanding and relaxing in the quiet twilight. As the seasons change and the crisp air of autumn heralds the approach of winter, a different kind of voice enters the soundscape of the steppe. From far across the plain, a deep, powerful roar echoes through the evening mist, a sound that makes every creature on the tundra pause in reverent silence. This is the call of a mature bull mammoth in the height of musth, his blood surging with power, energy, and the ancient drive to seek out a mate. His voice is a magnificent, booming resonance that combines the deep, earth-shaking infrasound with a raw, trumpeting crest that carries for endless miles. It is a proclamation of supreme strength and vitality, broadcast across the horizon to notify rival bulls of his presence and to invite the matriarchs to bring their families near. The sound carries such immense physical force that it seems to set the cold air itself into motion, a majestic anthem of life roaring against the vast, empty sky. And yet, for all its power and grandeur, the true magic of the mammoth's voice lies in its ability to bring tranquility to the wilderness. When a sudden threat appears, perhaps the distant, pale silhouette of a cave lion slinking through the high grass, the matriarch does not scream or panic. She produces a single, sharp, low-frequency alarm rumble. It is a clear, decisive command that instantly ripples through the ground. Within seconds, without a single loud noise being made, the scattered family draws together, closing ranks around the calves, forming a dark, impenetrable ring of fur and ivory before the threat can even draw near. As the long night deepens and the twilight surrenders entirely to a blanket of deep indigo, a profound quiet slowly returns to the land. The sun has dipped far below the edge of the world, leaving behind a sky dusted with billions of diamond-sharp stars that glitter in the clear, freezing air. The herd has finished its evening feeding. One by one, the great giants slow their movements. They gather close together in the lee of a broad, snow-draped ridge, pressing their massive bodies into a compact circle to share their warmth against the dropping temperature. The young calves sink down into the soft, dry grass at the center of the ring, tucked safely beneath the gentle arches of their mothers' trunks. Gradually, the calls begin to fade. The trumpets go quiet. The playful huffs of the juveniles soften into slow, rhythmic breathing. The powerful, earth-shaking rumbles that traveled across miles of open steppe dissolve into gentle, infrequent murmurs, like the last embers of a fire glowing softly in the dark. Finally, even those soft murmurs drift away into the stillness. The matriarch lowers her great head, resting the heavy, polished curve of her tusk against the frozen earth. She takes one last, deep breath, her nostrils sending a gentle plume of white steam into the crisp night air, and then she settles into rest. Now, the soundscape of the Pleistocene belongs once more to the earth itself. The great, low-frequency conversation has ended for the night, leaving behind a vast, peaceful sanctuary under the stars. Listen to the absolute quiet that remains. There is no sound of machines, no distant hum of human life, no commotion, only the long, slow lullaby of the winter wind as it glides over the crusted snow. It whispers softly through the dried grass, humming a gentle, steady tune that has played across these plains for millions of years. It brushes against the dark, warm fur of the sleeping herd, carrying their quiet breath up toward the infinite expanse of the starry sky. Wrapped in the impenetrable warmth of their thick coats, surrounded by the silent, watchful guardians of the family, the herd sleeps deeply and peacefully. The earth beneath them holds the memory of their voices, storing every rumble, every call, and every heartbeat in its frozen depths, waiting for the gentle light of morning to wake the sleeping giants once again. Chapter 9: Predators and Hunters. Let your mind wander back into the deep, shadowed twilight of the Pleistocene, where the wind whispers over the snow-crusted grass, and the great giants move across a world balanced between ancient stillness and subtle, shifting danger. In the vast expanse of the Mammoth Steppe, where horizons roll endlessly under a pale sky, life was defined by a quiet, watchful balance. For the woolly mammoth, danger was not a constant storm, but a rare shadow that occasionally drifted across their sunlit paradise. They were the undisputed monarchs of the Ice Age, so vast in size and so formidable in their collective strength that few creatures ever dared to challenge an adult in its prime. Yet, in the silent places where the tall grass swayed, hungry eyes were always watching, waiting for the moments when the herd's ironclad defense might slip. The oldest predators of the steppe knew the ancient rules of engagement. Great cave lions, their thick, pale coats blending seamlessly into the sun-cured vegetation, stalked the edges of the moving herds with practiced, patient grace. Beside them, in the deep memory of the land, was Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat, a muscle-bound phantom of the river thickets, armed with long, blade-like tusks, designed for swift, decisive strikes. Yet these natural hunters were bound by an instinctual caution. They knew better than to face a healthy adult mammoth, whose sweeping ivory tusks and crushing feet could shatter bone with a single, furious blow. Instead, the lions and saber-tooths waited for the vulnerable, the ancient elder whose legs could no longer keep pace with the herd, or the newborn calf that wandered just a few paces too far from its mother's flank. When a predator was sighted, the response of the herd was immediate, synchronized, and devastatingly effective. With a single low, resonant rumble from the matriarch, the family would pull together like water drawing into a tight, dark wave. The adults would form a solid, outward-facing ring of thick fur and towering ivory, placing their broad bodies like impenetrable ramparts around the young calves gathered at the center. Faced with a wall of crushing weight, sharp tusks, and furious, trumpeting defiance, even the largest pride of cave lions would reluctantly melt back into the high grass, choosing to search for easier prey elsewhere on the plains. For hundreds of thousands of years, this defense had remained unbroken, a timeless sanctuary carved out by family, size, and absolute unity. But as the Ice Age matured, a new kind of shadow began to move across the edges of the tundra, a creature unlike anything the mammoths had ever encountered before. They were strange, slender, upright beings that walked on two legs, lacking the thick fur, sharp claws, or immense strength of the great cats. To a mammoth, whose vision was attuned to the vast shapes of giant herbivores and low-slung predators, these new wanderers seemed frail, almost insignificant against the scale of the steppe. They did not smell of musk or blood, but of strange, pungent smoke and burnt wood. Yet, beneath their delicate appearance lay something entirely unprecedented, a terrifying, collective intelligence that operated beyond the raw instincts of the wild. These upright creatures did not hunt alone, nor did they rely on physical power. They hunted with tools forged from stone and wood, and above all, with incredible, calculated coordination. They moved in silence, signaling to one another with subtle hand gestures and low, bird-like whistles that vanished into the wind. They understood the land almost as deeply as the matriarch herself, recognizing the narrow choke points in the river valleys, the steep, treacherous drop-offs of muddy cliffs, and the deep, sucking bogs where a giant's massive weight could become its ultimate trap. Imagine a quiet afternoon on the open plain, when the low sun casts long, amber light across the snow. The matriarch pauses her grazing, her broad head lifting slowly into the crisp air. Her sensitive trunk curls upward, testing the breeze. The scent that drifts toward her is unfamiliar, carrying the dry smell of ash, leather, and sharp, napped flint. A short distance away, at the crest of a low, rolling ridge, a band of these upright hunters has appeared. They do not charge forward like lions, nor do they snarl or crouch in the grass. They simply stand there, silent silhouettes framed against the pale sky. In their hands, they hold long, straight shafts of wood tipped with razor-sharp stone, resting loosely at their sides. To the herd, there is no immediate sense of panic, no instinctual trigger that commands a sudden, desperate retreat. These creatures are small, and they stand at what should be a safe, comfortable distance. And yet, an uneasy silence falls over the family. The matriarch shifts her weight, her deep eyes tracking the motion of the figures on the ridge. There is something profoundly wrong about the way they move, the deliberate, unified focus of their gaze, the way they spread out in a wide, loose arc to slowly flank the herd, using the wind and the contours of the land to their advantage. They do not act like prey, nor do they attack like predators. They move with a quiet, patient certainty that feels alien to the ancient laws of the steppe. A low, questioning rumble vibrates deep within the matriarch's chest, a sound that ripples through the ground to bring the calves closer to her side. The adults turn their heavy heads, their long tusks sweeping through the air as they form a defensive posture, but the hunters do not push forward. They remain on the periphery, moving in parallel with the herd, stepping when the mammoths step, stopping when the mammoths stop. They are waiting for twilight to fall, waiting for the herd to enter a narrow ravine, waiting for the moment when fire and shouting can be used to startle the giants into a desperate, blinded stampede toward a hidden trap. The matriarch takes a long, slow breath, her warm steam drifting into the gathering dark. She does not fully understand these two-legged beings, but the ancient wisdom held within her mind recognizes a shift in the balance of her world. A new era has arrived on the ice, one where strength and size alone may no longer be enough to guarantee absolute safety. With a heavy, deliberate turn, the matriarch pivots away from the ridge, leading her family out onto the open, flat expanse of the tundra where no cliffs or bogs can hem them in. The herd follows her in a quiet, tight line, their massive feet crunching softly through the snow-crusted grass, their thick coats swaying rhythmically in the rising evening wind. Behind them, far back on the darkening horizon, the small, upright figures continue to follow. They move at a careful, tireless distance, quiet shadows trailing the dark giants as the vast, starlit sky opens up over the sleeping world, leaving the ultimate fate of the steppe suspended in the quiet, timeless darkness of the Arctic night. Chapter 10. Early Humans. In this quiet landscape, two extraordinary lives crossed paths, not as arch-enemies bound by endless tragedy, but as fellow wanderers sharing a solitary, frost-bound world. For tens of thousands of years, early humans and woolly mammoths walked the very same frozen steppe, looking up at the same winter constellations and drinking from the same icy rivers. To see the human story in the Pleistocene as merely one of destruction would be to miss the deep, quiet intimacy of their connection. Early humans did not look upon the mammoth with malice. They looked upon it with profound wonder, reverence, and awe. The giant was a living mountain of resources, a benefactor of life in a realm where life was incredibly hard to hold on to. In a world where timber was scarce and the tundra offered no soft shelter, the mammoth provided everything. Human bands gathered the bleached, heavy bones of fallen giants, curving massive ribs into structural arches and stacking heavy jawbones to create sturdy roundhouses that could withstand the fiercest polar gales. They draped thick, dark mammoth hides over these frame structures, sealing their hearths against the killing frost. Inside these warm, firelit homes, tucked safely against the howling wind, cravers worked by flickering light, carving delicate needles, hunting points, and small, beautiful figurines from mammoth ivory. On the smooth walls of deep stone caverns, lit only by tallow lamps, ancient artists painted the broad shoulders and sweeping tusks of the giant with charcoal and red ochre, capturing not just an animal, but the very spirit of their world. The mammoth shaped human culture, survival, and imagination. In turn, humans became part of the mammoth's landscape, a new, unpredictable factor on the open plains. Mammoths were far from helpless, towering over these small bipedal hunters with immense strength and centuries of herd wisdom. Yet as the centuries rolled slowly on, something subtle began to shift across the frozen north. The Ice Age was coming to its long, inevitable end. The climate was warming, the vast grasslands were shrinking, and the deep snows were turning into damp, boggy forests where a giant's heavy stride struggled to find purchase. It was not a single blow, but a slow, quiet convergence of pressures. As the environment fragmented their ancient home, even the modest, calculated hunting by human bands began to weigh heavily on populations already stressed by a changing planet. The delicate balance that had sustained both species for millennia slowly began to tip. Picture those ancient campfires flickering softly on the edge of the Great White Plain. The hum of human voices blends with the distant, low rumble of a passing herd moving through the mist. They existed together under the same quiet stars, bound by the fragile, beautiful thread of survival, resting peacefully in a shared world that was already quietly beginning to change. Chapter 11. The Ice Recedes. Imagine the soft, rhythmic ticking of an ancient clock, slowly measuring out the passage of uncounted centuries, while the world quieted into a new era. The grand, icy theater of the Pleistocene was slowly bringing down its curtain, not with a sudden, violent crash, but with a long, drawn-out exhalation of warmth. The great cold that had carved the earth for thousands of generations began to soften. Gentle, persistent rains fell where relentless polar gales once ruled, and the vast, dry ocean of golden grass that had nourished millions of giants began to shrink under a relentless tide of change. As the sun lingered longer in the northern sky, the permafrost gave way to dark, sodden earth. The open, sunlit steppe, that infinite paradise of sage and wind-swept sedge, was slowly invaded by the creeping shadow of the trees. Dark, dense boreal forests of pine, spruce, and larch surged upward from the south, swallowing the vast horizons. Bogs and thick, mossy tundra choked the fertile soil, turning the firm, dry earth into soft, muddy quagmires where the heavy steps of a giant sank and struggled. The world was growing warmer, wetter, and infinitely smaller for the lords of the Ice Age. With their boundless grasslands fracturing into isolated islands of green, the great herds had no choice but to retreat. The vast procession that once stretched from the sunny hills of Iberia across the crown of the world to the heart of North America dissolved into quiet, scattered pockets. The grand migrations became shorter, constrained by dense timber and treacherous swamps. Where thousands of dark silhouettes once moved together in an unbroken wave across the plain, now only small, quiet family groups wandered through shrinking refuges, searching for the dry, protein-rich grasses of their youth. As generations passed, the distances between these remaining herds grew silently wider. The invisible network of infrasonic calls that had once united an entire continent fell quiet, the earth-shaking rumbles fading into empty space without an answering voice. Families became isolated, their numbers dwindling with every passing season. On the vast mainland of Eurasia and the Americas, approximately 10,000 years ago, the very last footprints of the giant were filled by spring rains, and the mainland fell completely silent. Yet, far to the north, in the frigid, wind-scoured waters of the Arctic Ocean, a tiny remnant of this lost empire clung to existence. On a remote, mist-shrouded sanctuary known as Wrangel Island, a small band of mammoths survived, trapped by the rising sea levels that cut them off from the changing world. Here, adapting to their tiny island home over thousands of isolated years, they grew smaller, gentle, dwarf mammoths walking the rocky beaches under the pale polar light, unaware that they were the last of their kind. This lonely pocket of giants endured in absolute solitude for 6,000 more years. While far to the south human civilizations rose, constructed the great stone monuments of stone, and built the grand Egyptian pyramids, which were already standing ancient beneath the desert sun, the last mammoths were still walking the cold, foggy cliffs of their Arctic island. They were a living echo of a forgotten epoch, holding the flame of the Ice Age alive on the absolute edge of the world, entirely alone in an ocean of silence, waiting patiently as the final shadows of deep time gathered around them. Chapter 12. The Last Mammoth. Let every remaining thought settle softly into the quiet dark around you, like fresh snow falling upon an ancient, sleeping earth. The long journey across deep time reaches its peaceful horizon, where the boundaries between memory and dream gently dissolve. Of all the majestic beings that ever walked the primeval world, none occupies a place so beloved or so hauntingly close to our hearts as the woolly mammoth. They are not merely creatures of paleontology, they are the ultimate symbols of a lost paradise, living bridges connecting our modern world to a time when giant hearts beat beneath starry, polar skies. Even now, thousands of years after their great steps fell silent, the mammoth continues to speak to us across the vast abyss of time. Deep in the dark, frozen vaults of the Siberian permafrost, the earth has held them in a gentle, icy embrace, preserving their forms with heartbreaking perfection. When indigenous reindeer herders or wandering scientists discover the remains of young calves like Luba or Yucca emerging from the melting riverbanks, it feels less like unearthing a fossil and more like awakening a sleeping child. Their soft, auburn wool remains intact, their delicate trunks still curled as if resting between breaths, and inside their quiet stomachs lie the preserved, unmelted leaves of buttercups and tundra grasses from their very last meal. To look upon them is to engage in a silent, reverent conversation across millennia, a whisper from an age of frost, reminding us of how fragile, beautiful, and fleeting every life on this turning planet truly is. Now, let your mind drift to that final, lonely sanctuary on Wrangel Island, where the last giant stood on the absolute edge of the world. Picture this solitary mammoth standing upon a snowy cliff overlooking the grey, churning waves of the Arctic Ocean. The broad, endless steppe of its ancestors was gone, swallowed by dark timber and rising seas, leaving only this small, wind-swept haven in a vast blue void. It lifts its broad head one final time, feeling the cold, familiar bite of the northern wind rustling through its thick auburn coat. The great herd is no more. The ancient calls have all faded into the air. And yet, there is no fear here, only a profound, timeless peace. The last giant lowers its heavy head, resting its curved ivory tusks against the soft, cool snow of the island. It exhales a long, gentle breath that rises into the twilight as a faint mist of silver steam, drifting upward toward the cold, quiet stars. Slowly, the last mammoth lies down upon the tundra floor, tucking its feet close, folding into the deep, welcoming rest of the earth. The Arctic wind whispers a soft, eternal lullaby over the snow-covered slopes, brushing away the final footprints until the island goes completely, beautifully quiet. And as the last echo of the Ice Age fades into absolute silence, you too let go of the waking world, sinking deeper and deeper into the warm, weightless dark, drifting peacefully alongside the gentle giant into an unbroken, dreamless sleep.